Welcome to Around the Barrel.
That's when you just turn it off.
Get some, is it Barry Manilow? We'll get some of his music, background music.
I want rough and rugged.
Well,
Little John Wayne.
we could do that.
All right.
Yeah. Play some of his movies in the background. But, okay. And,
Hey,
Josh,
what are we having today for a coffee?
what coffee we...
This is Blacksmith's famous Ethiopian, which
Gadeb?
I think I don't know how to pronounce another word.
Oh, okay.
So you have to ask Sam on that one.
Gadeb.
Gadeb.
Is that a bean type?
I have no idea.
I'm not even going to tip that.
But
so.
they were out of this for a while, and so
It's actually really good.
when they got it back, I was like, I want a bag of that. So we just had Sam on, the guy that roasts for Blacksmith Coffee on the podcast. So yeah.
So we're not going to ask Chad how he likes it because he wanted more of a free
I
drink.
did give him a little bit of it. To at least
He
sample
did.
it.
He gave me a sample here.
There's no cream in that, Jad.
So you can
I
chase
know.
it with the sugar afterwards. so that's a good thing.
I'm going to have to. I
Okay.
mean, that's just all there is to it.
Or put
I like it. You know, there is no chicory
Oh, nice.
in that one. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I don't know what you define as chicory, but
any kind of New Orleans style, or maybe Louisiana coffee or Cajun. I don't even know what kind of style it is, but that chicory taste, it just makes me squeamish. I don't know.
It's not bad if you have a scone or something with it to offset the squeamishness.
a beignet.
A beignet.
Well, if you put enough cream and sugar in it.
And the scone's got to have frosting on it. So
There's a little bit of that chicory, that little, maybe it's like the acid or the burn taste. I don't know.
I don't know.
It's yeah. Chad, what do they
It's
what do
okay.
they say? You want a little bit of coffee with your cream and sugar?
Yes.
That,
A little bit, just a little bit.
I just don't like the taste of coffee, but
Well, that really what you have over there doesn't taste like coffee. It's more of a dessert in a cup, isn't it?
yes, it is. And that's the way I like it.
Okay.
there we
All
go.
right. Hey, Nate, you want to introduce our guest today?
Oh, yeah. We got Chad from the Rescue Mission here with us, and we're really excited to just learn more about the Rescue Mission, learn more about you. I know Lance has known you for quite a while, and with the golf tournaments and stuff, and so just kind of want to know, the history, the background of the Rescue Mission, and your history, your background, and just kind of learn a lot about everything with it. So
I was asking Chad a while ago before we started how long he's been out there, and he's been there in two roles, but the role you're in right now is director. Is that your title?
Yeah.
What's your title out there?
Executive director.
Executive director. Okay. You've been doing that how long?
I've been doing that for 6 years, and I've been out at the mission for 15 years as an employee at the mission, and served as a volunteer there for 2 years prior to coming to work there. So all in all, about 17 years.
nice.
So your current facility out there, how long have you guys been out at that location?
We moved into that location in 1999, bought it in 98, moved in 99, and it has served us very well.
That's a great location.
So what's the history of the Rescue Mission? When did it all get started, and how'd that come about here in Salina?
Well, it started in 1981. A gentleman named George Knight just had saw the need for helping people who were having a difficult time in their lives and wanted to help out and make a difference. And so he started the Gospel Rescue Mission of Salina and started off by providing food, and then quickly realized that many of those people who were coming in for food didn't have a place to sleep at night. And so with that, he opened up a shelter and began providing both food and shelter, and of course, Christian ministry and sharing the gospel of Christ with those who were coming in and trying to help people find a better way.
Was that the original? Was it on North 13th or?
So I don't have the exact address for the original building. I believe it was on Crawford.
Okay.
It was there for 1 year, and it was during that 1 year that they were just serving meals. And then when they realized that they needed shelter also, that's when they moved over to, I think it was 12th and Bishop or 13th and Bishop.
I couldn't remember
somewhere
exactly.
right in there. And so, it was 1 year over at Crawford, and then they moved over to the place at 12th and Bishop. They were there till 1998, and that's when Charlie Walker and some other business owners partnered with Steve Kometz to purchase the building that we're in now, and it has served us very well. We moved in there in 1999. It's an old military barracks. It was built to be like a war bunker. It is solid concrete and steel. It is very sturdy. It is going nowhere. And so
Good place to hang out.
So when the
then.
tornadoes happen,
Yeah.
we're all going there because
It
it ain't going
is.
down.
Well, the powers that be thought it best that we put a fire sprinkler in the building, and we're just looking at each other saying, there's nothing but brick and steel here. What is going to burn? But, you do what you have to do.
Yeah.
So
You guys
now have
just
a fire sprinkler.
Get it
Pretty much
code.
just did the fire system, didn't you? Is that
Yeah, we
recent?
just recently got the fire sprinkler system in. So we were doing some remodeling of the building so we could fully utilize it. The need for services has been increasing over the years. And so previously we had 76 beds, but we had times where we had 80 plus, 90 plus, even up to 100 men in the shelter at one time. And so we realized, first of all, we didn't have enough beds, but second of all, we weren't staffed for serving that many people at the time. And so we started rearranging and reorganizing ourselves as a mission and our identity. Who are we going to be? What's our purpose? What's our goals? And so it was really during that time that we stopped becoming what most people would call your typical homeless shelter. Before then, we operated. Someone could come in, stay the night, leave the next day. Maybe 2 days later, they could come back, stay a night again, leave again. And so as our numbers began to grow to getting to be a little bit unmanageable, we started talking about what's our purpose for being here? Yeah. What's the outcome we want to see happen? And we started reorganizing ourselves, all of our policies, all of our programs back to what we desire the outcome to be, which is lives being transformed in the name of Christ. Taking a guy in, if a guy comes in unemployed, we're going to help him with employment issues, other life area issues, and help him to get the stability he needs to move back out in the community and be a productive member of society here in our community. And so when we transitioned to that model, it was a bumpy 6 months, but I tell you what, it completely transformed the atmosphere at the mission. And so people who were coming to the mission who really had no intentions of bettering their lives, they stopped coming. And the people who were left in the mission, it brought a more positive atmosphere within the mission because everybody was busy working on helping themselves and trying to move forward. Now, I say everyone, obviously not quite everyone, but most of the people. It certainly transformed the atmosphere at the mission for the positive.
It seems like, though, if you were the executive director or a volunteer or whatever step you were there, that would have made it more positive for the folks volunteering there to be involved and know what your purpose was, what direction you're going, and have a view of what you're trying to accomplish.
Absolutely. So it not only picked up the morale of our shelter guests, but it also picked up the morale of our staff.
Yeah.
It's really helped us to, in our hiring practices, to hiring people who are dedicated to transformation and, people who come in with that kind of passion. We're in a difficult job market. And one of the things that I believe about our current job market is people can be more selective right now about what jobs they take. And so they have a unique opportunity to find what they truly love, what they truly desire, and go wholeheartedly into those areas because there's job opportunities. I haven't seen one job field right now that doesn't have openings in it. So you can really chase your passions in today's job market and be able to find things that you connect with and truly desire to do. And so that's a good thing, in my opinion. So we're able to hire people who really want to be at the mission. They're not being at the mission just because of what we pay. After all, there's some jobs that are paying well more than what we can afford to pay.
Sure.
So people are truly following their passions. They're wanting their time to mean something. They're wanting it to be worthwhile, and they're wanting to get engaged. And this has allowed a great opportunity for those who want to do that.
With the rescue mission then kind of changing that purpose and redirecting what the goal is, if an individual comes to the rescue mission, is there a course or a program they have to go through and commit to and graduate from in order to get a job or succeed through?
Absolutely. So this is no longer a quote-unquote homeless shelter. We are now a recovery center for people struggling with homeless issues. Okay, homeless issues, predominant homeless issues that we face are mental health issues, addiction issues, basic life skill issues, people who have been through trauma and have not healed through the trauma or did not have adequate resources to get through the trauma they went through. And so whatever might have caused a person to need our resources, we want to get to the root cause of it. How can we help you most? You know, I've had 100 jobs, not literally, but maybe close to it. Because in the early part of my life, I struggled with addiction myself. For 17 years, I struggled with alcohol and drug addiction and just being wayward in life in general and trying to find my way. And as I was doing that, made a lot of poor decisions, lost a lot of jobs, got arrested a lot of times, had a period in my life where I was homeless. And all those things that you go through, as you're going through them, you start to get overwhelmed by your situation and circumstances, and sometimes it starts to feel like you'll never be able to get out of it. And I can't ever remember anybody sharing with me, Chad, you know, come here, we'll show you how to get out of it. What I mainly heard was, Chad, quit drinking, Chad, quit doing drugs, Chad, just get a job. Well, getting a job wasn't that hard. Keeping a job was. Stopping drinking was very hard. Stopping to use drugs was very hard. So oftentimes we say things that we mean well, but we don't fully understand. Just get a job. Just quit drinking. Just do drugs. And we minimize the struggle. We tend to take it as if it's a much easier thing, because to you and I, it is, you know, it's common for us today. But for the individual going through that, that's an uncommon skill set for them. And so giving them the support and structure they need to learn those skill sets and pouring the resources into them and starting to help them transform. Our brains are an amazing thing. So we have within our brains neural pathways. So we got these little things firing off in our brains. The more they fire, the more they connect. It forms a neural pathway, and it speeds up the reaction time of whatever it is you're going through in life. And so people who have grown up in trauma, grown up in crisis, grown up in dysfunctional homes, their brain gets wired according to their sets of circumstances, how they're interpreting their sets of circumstances, and their brain is just doing a fight or flight scenario. How do I save this person? How do I help this individual? Well, let's see. There's chaos all around. Shut up, withdraw, run, hide, get out of the way. You know, that's one response. Another response was, no, I've got to jump in and jump into control so that I can fix everything so that when so-and-so comes home, the house is perfect and they won't have anything to get angry about. Okay? And so our brains are constantly thinking of how to protect us, right? And along the way, we learn unhealthy habits of how to protect ourselves. So we push people away, we get into dysfunctional relationships, and we start having relationships with objects instead of people. It's easier for me to pick this, let's say this was alcohol. It's easier for me to have a relationship with this alcohol than to have a relationship with a person. Why? Because I'm in control of this alcohol. This alcohol, every single time I drink it, it's going to do the exact thing I want it to do. I'm going to drink it, and it's going to make me feel this mood. Okay? I'm going to experience a mood change. I'm going to feel in control of it, and therefore it's safe. And so now, instead of having a loving, nurturing relationship with a person or with God, I'm developing a nurturing self-relationship with an object, in this case, alcohol or drugs or sex or gambling or any of those other vices that we tend to run to and turn to. And so understanding that we've wired our brain this. Now think about this. If I've been drinking for 17 years, I've built up a very strong neural pathway in my brain so that it happens instantaneously, right? I experience a bad mood. I experience something that's unenjoyable. I get angry, I get upset. And my brain's first response is, you can restore your mood by picking up your alcohol. You can control it. You can put yourself back in control. You can soothe yourself, and your brain does it automatically. Your brain isn't saying, hey, is this right or wrong? And it just does it. It's automatic. So we have to go through a process of retraining our brain, but you have to give the brain some other solution, right? Instead of picking up alcohol, now I'm going to learn to pick up a phone. Instead of hiding in my room, I'm going to make myself known. I'm going to be transparent with an accountability partner, and I'm going to talk to someone in a healthy manner instead of retreating to alcohol to deal with my problems. It takes, there was a recent study that was put out that where they did a big study on the brain, and they said that for the average addict, it takes anywhere from 1 to 9 years to rewire the brain and let the brain heal from all the damage that's done from the alcohol and the drug addiction. And so think about that when we all say, and then what do we do in our community? We offer 30-day programs. You offer a 30-day program for a fix that's going to take anywhere from 1 to 9 years for a person to help their brain to heal and start developing healthy habits. That's not going to happen in 30 days. That's insufficient. And so that's why we do not have a set amount of time that we will work with someone at the Salina Rescue Mission. Everything that we do is based on goals. And so we sit with the individual, we start listening to them, we try to understand what they've been through, we try to understand what all situations they're dealing with and what all resources we can bring to the table. And then we start setting goals with the individual. And we're willing to work with them for as long as they're willing to work on these issues and make progress. So our marker is, are we making progress? As long as we're making progress, we're going to continue to work with you. When you retreat back from the process, then we have to have a different discussion about, okay, are you ready to re-engage the process? Here's what's happening. You're relapsing. You're pulling back. This is a dangerous place for you. here's the scenario. We know from your past that when you go back and relapse, this is what happens. And we go through the list of all the things that they've been through before. We remind them of those places of pain. Is that really where you want to go back to? If it's not where you really want to go back to, let us help you. Let's get back into the process of moving forward. And, it all makes sense when you sit here and you explain it to people. But to be the one going through the process is still very difficult for a lot of people because it takes time, it takes patience, it takes commitment. It's frustrating because it's different. There's all these different roadblocks, and we always think, the Israelites came out of Egypt, but what they do when they get into the desert, they kept on thinking about going back to Egypt. It's the same thing with us as addicts.
40 years later, right?
Yeah, 40 years later, we're still thinking about, oh, how wonderful it was back in Egypt. No, Egypt was not a wonderful place, and we have to remind them that, no, Egypt was a miserable place. You've just been gone from it for a while, and you forgot about the misery that was attached to being there. You need to start focusing your vision on the promised land. What's forward? What does God have ahead for you? And start catching that vision that there is a better life. There's a life outside of Egypt that God has for you, and we want to help you find that. And so that was probably a long-winded...
No, that was I
good.
don't think people fully understand that journey. Like, well, you said you've gone through it yourself, but, you talk about that recovery period, and, outside of prayer and, of course, the power of Christ, that's a lot of resources and counseling and meetings and commitment. Where do you guys find all those resources? How do you get? That's a lot of stuff you have to provide to have someone go through that journey. So where does all that come from, and how does that work on that side?
Well, first of all, we're not the beginning and the end. God is, we're not.
Yep.
So everything is not our responsibility. Everything is not on our shoulders. So we're not medical health professionals, and we're not trying to be. We're not mental health professionals, and we're not trying to be. But we know that our residents have medical issues and they have mental health issues. So we partner together with other organizations in town that can deliver professionally the resources that we are unable to. So where we have a great understanding, we need to stand up and deliver. Where we are able to, that's where we stand up. In the places where we're unable to, that's where we look for partnerships and collaborations with other agencies. And so it's very important to make sure that we are working cooperatively with whether it's healthcare professionals, mental health professionals, CKF, Addiction Treatment Center, all of these agencies that are in our community all have a piece of the puzzle. We're not the beginning and the end of any of them. We are just Christ-centered and trying to lead men to help them understand what's happening to them, what their journey is, what they're going through, and then help them to find solutions. So with the resources that we use within the mission, we go out hunting. We read a lot of books. We look for different resources. And sometimes we compile resources like, this right here, this would be really helpful for our guys. And we'll take this from over here. Oh, this is some great information. And we'll start putting it together. And that's essentially what we do for most of our things. We keep components. So like in our employment program, once a guy becomes employed, we then start doing financial counseling. So what do? We take Dave Ramsey's model, okay?
It works.
Financial Peace University.
Yeah.
And we take the documents and we curtail the documents slightly to fit in the discussions with our residents. So our residents have things that are very common. Court fines, might be one of them. Child support, so forth. And we make sure that when we are teaching a guy how to budget, we're including things that are pertinent to his life, his lifestyle, what his debts might look like, what his expenses will look like, so that it makes sense to that individual. And so we talk to guys, we typically ask, do you know how to do a budget? Almost every single one of them will say yes. Great. Tell me how you budget. Well, I spend my money on what I need to spend it on. That's not a budget. And so we have forms, and we pull out those forms, and we sit down and we'll go over it with them, and we'll help them to understand what a real budget looks like. After you write the budget, writing the budget's the easy part. Following it. That's where the real rub takes place. And so a guy will need to come into his regular meeting that he has scheduled with our staff person, and he will need to bring in his pay stub and all of his receipts. And then it's a matter of sitting down together. Okay, how did we do this week at following our budget? Well, let's look. And it's not about, I caught you doing something wrong. It's about helping the guy to be realistic and help him to understand what his spending habits are, what his relationship with money. Because spending money can be one of those outlets that we use to try to make ourselves feel better and make ourselves feel in control. So I'm going to go spend money on this because I deserve it, and this, that, and the other, and I feel better when I buy something, But there's something. It can be unhealthy also. And so we want the men to understand how to have a healthy relationship with money, how to do their financial planning. We set up an emergency fund goal. We set up debt payments, and we work a debt snowball plan.
Nice.
Get those baby steps going, right?
Yeah. But it's not a matter of just telling you what you need to do. It's sitting with you, helping you to learn that skill and put that skill into practice. It's that level of support and accountability that makes all the difference. And the people we work with, they need it.
So does this program have a specific name, you call it, that they go through
So the financial counseling is true in all of our programs, because it doesn't matter which program you're in. You're going to have to deal with finances no matter what. So the financial component is across the board in all of our programs. So one guy might enter into the mission and say, hey, I'm just here, going to rest for a few days and go on the road. Okay, that's fine. You can come here. You can rest for 4 days, get meals, get fed, get showered, get some clean clothes. And if you want to continue your journey on, that's A-okay. However, we want you to know what programs we have here. And if you decide you ever want to work on your life, we want you to know that this is a place that you can start getting the help and healing you need. And so we will explain to them what our programs are. Our program that gets used the most is our employment program. And that's for guys who are coming in who say, hey, I just want to get a job, save money, move into my own apartment. Okay, great. Those sound like good goals. We can work with that. Yeah. And so we have a counselor who meets with them every week. They will be assigned to a class for the week. So, for example, this week's class might be how to fill out your application, how to write a resume, interview skills, dressing for the interview. Once you get the job, how do you keep a job? What are some of the work traits that you need to display? And so we do a lot of life skills education. And once a guy gets a job, then we move from, job search. Now we've got employment. Now we start focusing on financial management. So they're graduating up, right? So every step of the way, they're getting the education they need as they're going through that stage. Ultimately, as they're progressing in the financial management, we're going to end up talking about okay, what's it going to cost for you to live outside the mission?
Yeah.
How much money do you need to have saved up? How are you going to transition to this? And most importantly, what does healthy housing look like? There's a big difference between affordable housing and healthy housing. Affordable housing is just cheap housing I can afford. But some of the affordable housing opportunities in our community are not healthy communities to be in, because there's a lot of drug and alcohol use, there's a lot of dysfunctionalism going on, so we have to talk about what's a healthy place to live. And so we help them as they start making that transition back from the mission back into the community, and write up a sobriety plan, or, it depends on the individual. If maybe the individual didn't have addiction issues, but had mental health issues. So it would be, what's your mental health plan? Or, whatever it is your life controlling issue is, we'll have a plan for how do you stay on the right track and not fall back into those same old habits. So some guys come in and they want the employment program. Other guys come in and say, hey, I don't need another job. I've had 100 jobs. I can't keep a job. I need more than just another job. I need wholesale change in my life. And I'm open to Christ, and I'm ready for God to do something in my life. And then we have a new life program that's there for those men who want that kind of help. So it starts off with the first section of the program, takes 4 to 6 months, and it focuses on recovery, relapse prevention, and committing to change and your relationship with God.
Is the mission their primary home during that time period?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, the mission is their home at that time period. And so the entire program is a pretty long program. It could take anywhere from a year to 2 years to go from beginning to end through that program.
If a guy has a family and he's doing that, is the family able to be there too, or is it,
No.
hey, you got to be separate still during that time?
Yes. So typically, when a guy comes into the mission, he's lost quite a bit, including a lot of family issues. And so, we've had a lot of guys whose wives have said, unless you go in and finish that program, you're not coming home. So typically things have gotten pretty dysfunctional in the home before they enter into the mission. So as the guy is at the mission, that first portion of the program is all about consecration. What's your commitment to change? What's your commitment to God? What's your commitment to new life? And working through those issues. The rest of the program is all about discipleship. So the first part is all about commitment, diving in. This is what I want. I'm learning what this means. I'm fully knowledgeable of what this commitment is that God's calling me to, and I'm 100% on board with. I want to give my life to Christ, and I want to learn what it means to live this out.
Wow. So throughout the year and throughout the program, do you have how many people are typically involved and active in this program at any given time?
Well, at any given time, we can have up to 15.
Wow.
We had 27 different people enter in and out of the program over the past year. We average about 8 to 10 guys in the program at any given time. So, oftentimes guys will make commitments and they start off strong, but then they pull back. And so we see that quite a bit. But after they get over that first section, then the rest of it is about discipleship, growing in Christ. Colossians talks about putting off the old and putting on the new. So learning to identify what those old patterns are and what the new patterns are I need to put on. And them living at the mission and being at the mission full time give us an opportunity to do practicum with them. Practicum is just the practice of what I'm learning. And so how am I practicing what I'm learning, and how can we see what they're learning? Well, it's the daily interactions that happen through the mission naturally on a daily basis, shows us how the person's progressing through that. So the first part is about learning to love yourself and being who God designed you to be. The second part of that discipleship has to do with, how do I have healthy relationships? Love God with all your heart. Love your neighbor as yourself, right? So first, consecration is loving God with all our heart, mind, soul, and strength. You can't love your neighbor as yourself till you learn how to love yourself in a healthy manner. So then we start working on, how do we love our neighbor? The only way you and I can have a healthy relationship is through forgiveness. Because you're a flawed person, I'm a flawed person. Neither one of us are going to see from eye to eye, all the time. We're always going to have something we disagree about. How do you live in a healthy manner with people in our current state as we're committed to God? You can't do that unless you have some humility and some forgiveness. Those are the only ways we can have healthy relationships. And so it's during that portion of the program we invite the family members to come in and be a part of the counseling and be a part of the healing. Too often what happens is we put all the resources into the addict who has been struggling and been causing all the chaos, but in the meantime, the family's been hurt. Everybody around the addict gets hurt in the addiction. How do you bring healing to the entire family? So that's what we focus on at the mission. We invite, and some family members are reluctant because they've been hurt so many times, and other family members are all on board and all go. Usually what happens is the guy comes into the program and he's thinking, my family wants nothing to do with me anymore. There's no point in even calling them. But we'll keep pressing the issue. No, we need to call them. Let's call them. Let's see what happens. No. They're not going to want to have me. But oftentimes the man ends up being surprised because the family member comes in and says, yes, I will do this. Thank you for doing this. And they'll come in and they'll let the guy know. All we ever wanted was for you to get better and change and stop doing the things that you've been doing. That's all we've ever wanted. And so a lot of times the addict coming in has a misconception about what people are willing to forgive him of, partly because he's struggled to forgive himself for those things. And so we're inviting the family to walk through that process of forgiving one another and then learning how to have a healthy relationship going forward. And then the final part of the program is, okay, now that you've learned all of this and you know how to live life on different terms, now what's God's plan and purpose for your life? God has a ministry for you. In my addiction, I was self-serving. I was always looking at myself, always trying to please myself and make myself happy. That's not who I am anymore. I'm the opposite of that. So instead of being self-serving, I'm going to start serving God and serving others. Instead of being a drain on the community, I'm going to start giving back to the community, and I'm going to start helping others. I was once a person who needed help. Now I'm a person who gives help. And so you need to find what your ministry calling is. And so during that last portion of the program, they start going out and volunteering at different places in the community and start learning to give back and start trying to find where it is God's calling them to serve their community in. And so by the time a guy finishes the program, he should know clearly what his calling is. He should already be engaged in practicing that. And, of course, he will help him to find a job also and start making that transition. And then we'll have an aftercare period, which is transitional housing, so that when he leaves the program, he has a place to wrestle with that transition a little bit and still have the support of us at the mission, but still having a lot more freedom and autonomy in his daily life. And so doing that transitional housing is the last piece.
So getting engaged in the community, and you mentioned discipleship and wanting to, okay, we're at the point now where we're going to give back and be a part of the community. Are they free to go to different churches in the community, or can they only stay at the rescue mission during that?
No, so through the whole program, they're free to go to any church they would like to go to, but they have to go to church. We don't tell them what church to go to. We want to see you going to church, and we want to see you get engaged in your local church. And at first, it's just going to church and start building familiarity with people at church. Yeah. And as you progress, it should turn into, okay, I'm going deeper into church. I'm becoming known now. I'm going to allow myself to be known by this body of believers. I'm going to engage in Bible study. I'm going to start conversating. I'm going to start fellowshipping. And then towards the end of the program, they should be giving back at their church. So maybe serving some way, whether it's as an usher or helping with the cleanup committee or helping with something around the church, so that they're not just there as an attender, but they're there as part of the body doing the work of Christ within the congregation.
And it seems, not it seems like it, you're making it very clear that the whole purpose is to, like you said, the ideal goal would be give your life to Christ and follow what God's plan is for you, and stop receiving too much stuff. Like,
right.
How do you give back?
Yes.
So during COVID,
yes.
It seems like a whole part of that time period, it was reverted back to being reliant on different things. Has that affected you guys quite a bit, and a strain on the rescue mission?
Well, sure. Since COVID, so here's what happened when COVID came around. COVID came, and some guys left because they were concerned about living in a community setting, and no one knew exactly what to expect from COVID. There was a lot of fear, a lot of concerns going around, and so we had a lot of guys leave. And not only that, about that same time, the government started printing money and giving money out left and right to all kinds of organizations, and they were basically, a lot of organizations sheltering people in hotels. And I just want to make this clear. Hotels are not bad places for you and me. But hotels are horrible places for people who have been wrestling with addictions, because it allows them to hide, isolate, and you know, a lot of these guys, especially the ones that live from time to time in hotels, hotels have been a place where they retreat to use. And so getting locked into a hotel, free room and board, okay, with nothing to do, was not a healthy solution to people. And then you kick a few what did they call those, stimulus checks out. You know, it really created a lot of problems. It may have helped some people, but it also hurt some people. So here's so all the money printing and giving is slowing down for all of those programs now. And so what we're seeing is, as all of that's changing, our numbers are spiking up tremendously. We're not back to pre-COVID numbers. We're above pre-COVID numbers. Why? Because they were exasperating the situation. So people that could have been getting help were instead getting propped up. And so I'm concerned about the current economy with all the things we're seeing right now. Homeless numbers are up. There are people who are struggling even more than ever before to make ends meet, and it has an impact. And so I'm just concerned over what these next couple of years are going to look like.
So right now, with your involvement out there, how many meals do you think you've served in the last year?
We've served over 54,000 meals this past year.
So that you serve what, breakfast and supper?
So we serve breakfast only to our residents.
Okay.
We serve lunch and dinner to anybody in the community who needs a meal. They don't have to come up and show proof of need or anything. All they got to do is show up, and we'll feed somebody and help a family in the community that's struggling to make ends meet.
54,000 meals.
54,000 meals this past year.
I can't do that in my head to figure out how many average that is a day, but my goodness.
It's somewhere between 150 to 160 meals a day.
Wow.
There's something, Chad, that when you and I got lunch a while back that's just continued to play in my mind. And it connects to this idea of what the rescue mission actually brings. It doesn't just bring a handout, and I like that language that you used of being propped up versus, long-term solution and help. You had mentioned that book, When Helping Hurts.
Yes.
And you told me about the story of the guy that I guess went to Africa and
Right.
Was reflecting years later on the work that they had done there. But you had made the comment, we should always be quick to meet someone's physical needs, but not take away their responsibility.
Yes.
And I think that's you told me that, and it stuck in my head. And I think what you're describing is the fleshing out of what the rescue mission does, which it is, just like you said, it's that sack lunch where it's that you can come get dinner here, you can stay the night. But the ultimate goal is to put you into a process of a habitual pattern towards healing and health and growth.
Yes.
And
So we can take two biblical characters and do a very short analysis and look at two different scenarios and outcomes. One is blind Bartimaeus. Okay, he's blind for 38 years. He's on a road. He's a beggar, right? And all he does is hang out on that road begging, and people give him little tips here and there so that he can buy bread so that he can come back tomorrow and beg again. All they're doing is propping him up, right? So they're offering temporary help and offering a temporary solution to a more permanent problem. Okay. Christ comes, he starts shouting, they tell him who's coming, they tell him why they're all excited, and he starts hearing this and he starts crying out for Jesus. They, of course, told him, "Hey, shut up! Don't bother Jesus. You beggar. What are you gonna do? You gonna ask him for a nickel? I mean, And so, Jesus hears him, calls out to him, and of course, Jesus says, "What do you want?" That's an important question. What do you want? He could have very easily said, "I want a 5-spot."
Right.
Okay? But that's not what he said. What he said was, "I want real healing. I want my eyes to be open. I want to be set free from begging. I don't want to continue on this road anymore. I want a new life." And so if that's what Jesus did for him, that's what we need to be ready to help do for others. It was something Bartimaeus couldn't do for himself. Right, and so that's was the gist that I was talking to you about from that book. You help people do for them what they cannot do for themselves. You teach them to do what is their responsibility to do. Okay, one other example would be the Good Samaritan. The guy gets beaten up, robbed, left on the street naked. Priest walks by, leaves him there. Levite walks by, leaves him there. Samaritan walks up and has compassion on him. He nurses his wounds, He puts clothes on him, puts him on his donkey, takes him to an inn, and continues to care for him. I love the story of the Good Samaritan for a couple of reasons. One is that most of the biblical stories, the healing was instantaneous. But in the story of the Good Samaritan, what we see is healing takes time. And so the individual gets helped from his current location, shifted to another location. He's at the inn. He's continuing to get cared for at the inn. A few days passed. The Samaritan needs to go on his business trip. He goes to the innkeeper and says, hey, here's some money. Continue to take care of this guy for me. And when I get back, I'll reimburse you for any additional expenses you have. The whole concept of that healing is it's going to take time for this guy to heal, and we're going to continue to be with him for that. However, their intentions there was not to take care of him for the rest of his life. That is, they weren't going to create an environment where this guy now becomes dependent upon them, and he just stays in a hotel and stays propped up and people wait on him left and right. That's not what the plan was. The plan was to do that for the time period that it needed to be done in order to get him healthy. We also have biblical references where we go back where Paul writes, I think it's to the Thessalonians, if I remember correct, says there's some of you that are not busy, but you're busybodies, and you're laying around being lazy. And I'm going to tell you, we set an example for you. If a man shall not work, he shall not eat. So what's he telling you? Hey, if you're healthy, you need to be doing the things you need to be doing to take care of yourself. You can't be sitting around just freeloading and sponging off everyone else. So there's that duality there, right? There's that part of people being able to identify where the real needs are, who's willing to accept the real help for real change, and then there's those who just want the free handouts, but they don't desire the change. And so there's a little bit of a discernment process involved in all this, and we're trying to help those who really want the change, help them with the changes that they need to make. But for those who don't want the change, well, you just go on, continue on somewhere else. I guess you're not ready yet. And when I say I guess you're not ready yet, I say this because there was a time in my life when I was not ready for real change.
Do you mind sharing your story?
I've got time. Yeah, sure. So I want to start by saying this. There is not one single guy at the rescue mission that has ever come to told me it says, well, I hit my goal. I made it to the mission. There was not one guy who ever came to me and said, yeah, when I was a child, I grew up hoping I'd be coming homeless one day.
Yeah.
You know, for me, it started when I was 15. I was an insecure young man wanting to fit in, looking for where I belong, didn't feel very good about myself, and took whatever I could get. I started smoking weed and drinking at the age of 15. And when I started smoking weed and drinking, I'm going to tell you, I did not for 1 minute think I would become an alcoholic, nor did I plan to become a drug addict. It wasn't my plan. And so as I moved down that road, at first, when you take those first drinks, when you use that first time and you have that euphoria, and you think, man, that felt good, and you think, man, I enjoyed that, man, I'd like to do that again. And then you do it again and again and again, and then something's wiring in your brain, right? Going back to what we talked about at the very beginning. It's wiring a neural pathway in my brain. I'm creating a habit, and now I'm developing a dependency on these things. And of course, it didn't stop there, because then I started trying other drugs, looking for new euphorias and finding them in many different things. It came to a point in my 20s that I learned that I could make more money selling drugs than I could working. And I was lazy. So why the heck am I going to go bust my hump, at a job when I can chill back, smoke weed and sell some and use some and, all of that. And of course, at that time I wanted to be a rock star, and I wanted to, MTV was, out, and it looked so fun, and I wanted all the fun. Very, very me, self-centered person,
Are you from Salina then, or?
No,
Okay.
I grew up in Texas primarily. In my high school years, I lived in Dallas,
Okay.
and then my early adulthood lived in Houston. And so as I went deeper into the music scene and into my habits, got to using a lot of cocaine. Over the years, I overdosed many times on accident, whether it was shooting it up or smoking it. During those years, I was in and out of jail. I don't even know how many times I was arrested. I can tell you, there was one time, I was telling this story earlier today, there was one time I got released from jail, went from jail to the bar, went from the bar right back to jail.
Wow.
It was, not too many people can accomplish feats like that. But I was able to, just so you know. So you're sitting with greatness here.
Setting the bar high.
Yes,
No pun intended.
yes, I was high, that's for sure.
But that speaks to the power of what Christ has done in you.
Yes.
On the other side,
Yes.
which is a testimony to everyone about the path of the light and out of darkness.
Yes.
So share that with us.
So as I was getting deeper and deeper into my addiction, I was selling drugs, and I had a pot dealer who was giving me a bunch of pot, and I had a coke dealer who was giving me a bunch of coke, and I was using everything in excess, and I would rob Peter to pay Paul. Take the money from over here to pay this guy, take the money from over here to pay this guy. That always works out well until it doesn't. Well, I finally got to one of those times where it didn't. And I realized I really messed myself up. And I'm going to backtrack just a minute. And I'm going to say this. Over the years, I had times where I wanted my life to be different, but I just wanted my circumstances to be different. Then I wanted my life to be different, but I didn't know how to be different. Then I went through a stage where I was to ask for help to be different. And during those days, I tried AA, NA, and AAA. I did them all. I did inpatient, outpatient. There isn't anything in there, any treatment program I don't think I haven't been through. And I continued to relapse and relapse and relapse. And there's something that a relapse does to you. When you've made a commitment and you really made a good, solid effort to change, and then you still relapse, it's debilitating. It's depressing. It's shameful. It causes you to stop believing that you can ever change and you can ever be different. And that's important to understand, because this is where I was in my head that night. As I screwed it all up again, the girl that I was with, she left me. She was smart. I mean, that was the smartest move she ever made. And but I'm sitting here depressed. I'm angry. I know I screwed myself over again, and I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to do. And I just said, you know what? This is so exhausting. I'm just tired of this. And I decided that night I was going to kill myself. And I had enough cocaine left. You know, like I said before, I've accidentally overdosed many times on cocaine, so I knew I had enough to overdose. So as I'm getting ready to kill myself, I started thinking about, what's it going to be like to die? You know, is it going to be like I just fell asleep and just never woke up? I wonder if it's going to hurt. And then some little light went off in my head, and I said, I wonder if there's life after this. I wonder if I'm about to meet God. And is God going to be ticked off at me? I wonder if God's going to send me to hell. So as I'm contemplating all these things, I just remember saying, to heck with it. I'm living in hell anyway, so I might as well get it over with. And I said a short prayer. I said, God, forgive me for what I'm about to do. And I took a shot of cocaine. And I can't tell you everything that happened, but what I can tell you is that when I came to, I was, you know, just gasping for air, just fighting to try to breathe. And eventually my breath came back to me. I was all disoriented, didn't know where I was, and eventually my mind kind of came back and I realized where I was. And then it hit me, oh no, I'm still alive. That was my exit plan, and it failed. What in the world am I going to do now? And I started crying and boo-hooing and have a little pity party. But that night I started talking to God. And that night I said something along the lines of, God, I don't know if you're real or not. But God, if you are real, please do something with my life, because I hate the way I'm living. That started me on a journey of trying to find some kind of purpose and a meaning to life. And I didn't start off by going to church or going and talking to a pastor or by going to the Bible even. I just started that journey, and part of it because of some of my own hang-ups. You know, I went to church when I was young. I knew what Christianity was. No, I didn't. But in my mind, I knew what it was. And so I tried looking at different philosophies and different faiths. And my dad at the time was big into New Age stuff, and New Age stuff was easy. You know, it let me feel spiritual without having any accountability. And so I did that for a while, and this friend of my dad's gives me this book to read, and the book was called The Power of the Tongue. And it was basically about, you know, positive affirmation. Say positive things will happen to you. Say negative things will happen to you. But in the book, it quoted the Bible as its source of authority for why it came to these conclusions. Now, some of the conclusions were misguided, but it reintroduced me to the Bible in a way that made me curious. Oh, I didn't know the Bible said that. Oh, I didn't know the Bible said that. Huh. And I started wondering, well, I wonder what else the Bible says. And so it's planted a seed in me that for the first time in my adult life, I wanted to go out and buy a Bible and read it just to see what it says. I didn't want anyone to tell me what it says. I don't like being told what to do. I'm a pretty headstrong guy, you know. So I, over the next couple of months, continued to think about buying a Bible. And one day I'm driving down the road and I pass a bookstore and I just felt, you know, this is one of those times where I would say I felt like the Lord spoke to me, you know, because he really got my attention. And I just felt it like a thunderbolt. You need to go over here and get you a Bible. So I made the block. I'd already gone past it. I made the block, went back to the bookstore, walked into the bookstore. A lady says, "Can I help you?" I said, "Yeah, I'm looking for a Bible." I'm thinking she's taking me over to this little section. There's going to be 2 or 3 Bibles on the shelf, and I'm just going to, you know, take one and go. She takes me to this monstrous wall full of Bibles. And I'm just
1,000
thinking,
choices.
yes, and I'm just thinking to myself, oh my gosh, which one do I get? You know, and there were 2 things that helped me out that day. One was I didn't have very much money. Okay.
Narrowed your selection down.
So that narrowed my selection down quite a bit. I'm looking for the cheap Bibles. Number 2, I saw this one Bible that said "Words of the Lord in Red." And I'm going to tell you this. I didn't want to read the whole Bible.
Go to the red stuff,
you know,
right?
it was
It's a lot bigger than I remember.
it was a thick book, and I was like, man, I don't want to read all that. So it said "Words of the Lord," and I'm like, great, Cliff Notes. So
That's great.
So there was this little King James Version Bible that was $8, and I said, bingo, "Words of the Lord in red," $8. That's the one. And I bought that best $8.
How old were you, Chad, at this time?
I was about 30
Okay.
when that happened. and the best $8 investment ever. So I take the Bible home and I start at the beginning, you know, and I'm just looking for the words in red. I don't know anything. I don't know anything about the Bible here.
Get through the Old Testament.
Yeah, I flipped through
There's
the whole
nothing
Old
there.
Testament, and I'm like, gosh, the Lord doesn't have much to say. and so finally,
It's a misprint on the front.
I was starting to think that. I was like, well, is there anything in red? I even flipped to the end. I didn't see anything in the end in red. I was like, oh, what am I doing here? So finally, I found this little sliver in that Bible that had some words in red, and I opened it up to the Gospel of Matthew. And that's where I started reading. And that's when I met Jesus.
Wow, cool.
And I heard Jesus say to his disciples, "Come and follow me." I thought, well, I don't have anything better to do. And I just started reading and getting to know Jesus. Not getting to know church, not getting to know a denomination, not getting to know a pastor, not getting to know what somebody wanted to tell me about Jesus, but I just started to get to know Jesus. And as I was reading, it was like these little light switches coming on in my head. Little things I'd never heard before that suddenly made sense to me. And it started off with, I kind of like this Jesus guy. And as he helped others that were in need and he reached out to people that others rejected, I began to admire this Jesus guy. And when I started to understand that he died on the cross for my sins, I began to love him. Now, I'm a skeptical guy by nature. I've been lied to a few times in my life. So I test things. And I read once in the Bible, say to this mountain, it will be moved and it will be done. Okay, Lord, move that bottle of water. Move it across the table. If you can move a mountain, you can move the bottle of water. Okay? I mean, I'm just that kind of, I guess I'm a jerk. I mean, I'm telling God, you got to move that bottle. You got to prove something to me.
Not many people are going to admit that they've done that. So, yeah.
And then I read the passage, anything you ask for in my name, I'll give to you. Okay, Lord, give me the winning lottery ticket. I did. I walked down to the corner grocery store, bought a lottery ticket, and went home, prayed over that lottery ticket. I was a good Pentecostal that day, laid hands on it and everything. It's time to draw the numbers. Not a single number was on that dang ticket. Not a single number. And I'm at that tipping point where I'm about to go one way or the other. And I remember just having a talk with the Lord. And I said, Lord, I don't understand this. This is what your word said. This is what I did. I threw you an easy test here. Move that bottle of water. You can move in a mountain. I said, you didn't move the water. What in the world's going on? Should I believe this or not? And I felt God speak to me in that moment. And God reminded me about all the times in the Bible where he told people, your faith has healed you and your faith has made you whole. And so I said, Lord, then what is it about faith that I'm not understanding? And this is one of those few moments where I heard the Lord speak in my heart. Of course, I didn't hear an audible voice, but I heard it in my heart. He said, Chad, if you had faith in me, you'd stop testing me all the time and just start learning to live with me and walk with me. And that was the day I said, okay, Lord, I'm going to give my life to you.
Cool.
And the Lord has moved me quite a long ways from then.
From Texas to Kansas.
From Texas to Kansas, from being a person who didn't know how to get out of their addiction to helping others break free from it.
So how'd that come about, coming to the rescue mission? Where'd that come into play?
Well, I'm not sure how much to share here because I can get long-winded, but after I gave my life to the Lord, I was just thirsting and hungering for God's word. I was just wanting to learn more. And so every night I'd get home from work and I wouldn't turn on TV. I'd just eat dinner and read the Bible and study Bible all night. And so I started having these experiences where as I was doing my Bible study, I would just get up and just start preaching out of whatever I was reading on. And in my head, though, I mean, in reality, I was in this little bitty apartment in East Texas. But in my head, I was in a church preaching to a congregation. And this kept happening over and over and over again. And by this time, I'd started going to church, and I shared it with my pastor, and he encouraged me to go back to school to enter into ministry. And so, and there's a lot of things that happened in all of this. But in the process, I started following that calling, went back to school, met my wife online on a Christian singles website. Because here I was 32 years old and going to college, and, you know, there's all these young people there, and you know, I was lonely, you know, and so I was met my wife. We started talking over the internet, and back then, you know, that was kind of a new thing. Not too many people were doing that back then.
back when we had dial-up, right?
Yeah. Well, it was pretty close to dial-up
Okay.
days. It was. My wife probably was still on dial-up at that time. So she was here in Lincoln, Kansas, and I was in a little school in East Texas. And so we met online. I drove up here, met her family, and we both knew right away, that we were who we were looking for. And so we got married. I finished my associate's degree in Texas and then transferred it here to Salina to Kansas Wesleyan and finished my bachelor's degree at Kansas Wesleyan. And while I was going to school at Kansas Wesleyan, I got a chance to serve in the Mentor United Methodist Church just south of Salina. And so it was while I was serving at that church that I started looking around trying to understand what the resources were in this community. Someone told me about the rescue mission, and so I went over there one day to just learn about them, and I immediately connected with the ministry that was happening there because of my own background.
Oh.
And just started volunteering there. And so I volunteered there for 2 years while I finished my bachelor's degree. I finished my bachelor's degree and then started seminary and did my first year of seminary while I was still volunteering at the rescue mission. And it was during that time that my predecessor, Steve Kometz, invited me to apply for a job there at the rescue mission, and the rest, they say, is history.
Awesome. That's great. So the rescue mission, how do you guys survive? Just getting right to the...
Through the generosity that God puts in people's hearts to give. We do not receive any government funding, so we depend solely on the free will giving of people in the community. 70% of our donations comes from individuals. Then, of course, about 10% from foundations, about another 14%, I believe, from churches, and then the rest from local businesses.
Can people come and serve at the, you said?
Absolutely.
So if someone wants to do that, how do they go about, hey, we want to help out with the rescue mission, we want to serve, we want to give, where do they go for that?
So they can either call the rescue mission at 785-823-2610 and ask for Chad or Krista, okay? Or they can email volunteer@salinarescuemission.com, and that will go to our volunteer coordinator. And there's also a place on our website, which is salinarescuemission.com, where they can fill out a little contact note and let us know that they want to volunteer, and we'll get back with them.
So you said earlier, because of COVID and the snowball effect of that, the need for the mission has grown dramatically.
Yes.
What's that do to your budget? What's your annual budget look like to operate out there? I mean, I would think the need would be high right now.
It is high right now. This is the largest budget we've had. Our budget this year is $1.6 million. It's up about 17% over last year.
Does food cost or energy cost play into that, or?
Yes. Food cost, energy costs, and labor costs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I guess, that for me is, I've enjoyed hearing the conversation and that, but, reality is we want to know what the need is and just getting this out to our people who watch. And I think the mission serves just a huge need for this community. And you've shared more today with me than I've ever knew. And I've enjoyed this a lot, but I don't know if you guys have some other questions along there. But
No, I just think it's, when I've looked at it from the outside, it seems, you mentioned the focus that are on men. And when you allow, when someone, in which I've had the opportunity to become friends with a couple of the guys to the program, and of course, Ben Jones was one of the new life directors there, and he's told me so many stories, but I think about what that means for a community if a father or a brother, or when they start to get healing and they bring that back to their families.
Yes.
And the way that has a multiplying effect within the community. It's the investment that people make within the rescue mission has ripple effects, not just in spiritual, but within the real city limits, of making families whole and making people also say, well, if that person changed, I can change. Or I remember he used to be like that, and now it's like maybe I should be less selfish and become more selfless and giving. And so I just think the whole story is amazing, which I know we're putting this out to our clients to hear the story of the local rescue mission, which they might not have much background on or on you, Chad, but the church that I used to be a part of, we went down there and cooked a couple meals, and it's a lot of fun.
Yes.
And my kids have gone down there and done that, and you make sack lunches for the guys that are going to go out the next day and look for so it's an invitation to our clients and for people that might be curious to invest in something that has real multiplying power in our community is the rescue mission. So I just want to acknowledge how awesome it is, and we appreciate the work and you coming to share the story with us about your journey.
Well, thank you, Josh.
So,
appreciate that.
You said already too, it helps men, and I think if anything, our culture needs more godly role model men in our nation right now, and it's just cool. Like you said, real quick, I guess last question I have is how many of the men that go through that program end up staying in Salina, or if you know that?
As far as percentage-wise, I could not tell you that because the nature of the clientele that we work with, they don't always stay in touch with us, and so we don't fully know what the percentages are. But I can tell you this. This past year, we helped 151 men who came from the mission find full-time jobs. We helped 110 men successfully transition out of the mission into their own apartment back in the community. And so, I'm going to finish this by saying, what does one guy look like? I'm just going to call this guy Chris. It's not his name, but because I don't have permission to share his story just yet. Right. But Chris came to our program 3 or 4 years ago. Broken guy, life was a mess, came into our employment program. While he was there at the mission, found a relationship with the Lord, found a job working at a local business here in town. Saw him at the gym last week. He is still working at that same business. He's in a lead position over there now. He's married now, has a child now, and he's giving back to the community, and he's still going to church. And so that's someone that we met 3 or 4 years ago and then ran into again yesterday. And I tell you, every place I seem to go, I always seem to run into somebody who's been here at the mission at some time in their life, and I get to see them out in the workplace, being a productive member of our community. And so it always does my heart good. I hear people being a little negative sometimes saying, oh, are those guys really helping anybody? Yes.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people getting some real help from the mission. So thank you.
Well, thank you for sharing the story, sharing your story too. I know that's
well,
awesome.
We
to hear
appreciate
that,
what
man.
you're doing out there, and just thanks for coming over today and hanging out with us.
Well, appreciate y'all having me because we still have a lot of work to do with educating the public on who we are and what we actually do in our community, because there does seem to be a lot of misperceptions about what we do and what we don't do, because we do have a homeless crisis in our nation. And so always glad to help educate and share with the community what's going on.
Do you guys share at churches? Do you go to churches
Absolutely.
and share?
Yep.
Good.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Yep.
Thank
That's
you for
good.
having me.
Thank you, Chad.
Appreciate it. Yeah.
All right.
content here is for illustrative and educational purposes only. It is not legal, tax, or individualized financial advice. Nor is it a recommendation to buy, sell, or hold any specific security or engage in any specific trading strategy. Results will vary. Market conditions change continuously. Past performance is no guarantee of future results or success. All investing involves risk, including loss of principal. Securities offered by registered representatives through Private Client Services, member FINRA SIPC. Advisory products and services offered by investment advisory representatives through RFG Advisory, a registered investment advisor. RFG Advisory, Billings Group, and Private Client Services are unaffiliated entities.